You're very welcome back and good morning. With over 1,000 episodes, the Crime World podcast offers listeners a deep dive into the real stories and the individuals behind the crime headlines.
We're joined now by the maker of that podcast, journalist and author Nicola Tallant. Nicola, thank you so much for joining us on the show this morning. You were up bright and early for us.
Well, yeah,
Thrilled
I'll
to be
try.
here.
I'm going to try.
Come here, of course, your podcast is going from strength to strength. So many listeners across all platforms, you've live shows, everything else. But I suppose the big name that you're dealing with these days is a family, a new, kind of not so new group, but emerging from the ashes of the former Kinahan.
Well, they're the biggest crime gang in Ireland now,
Yeah.
right? So the Kinahans have been dismantled in this country, not worldwide, but in this country. So the family have been around for a long time, and we've been writing about them and speaking about them for a long time. But in the last 10 years, they have emerged into this enormous grouping that would be the biggest in the country. They would be profiting about 4 million a month, profiting.
Wow.
Which is a lot. Yeah, I was told that figure the other day and I was like, oh my goodness, I'm in the wrong job. But that's the kind of money they're pulling in. So they used to be a kind of a heroin grouping. They're now bringing in cocaine, weapons, everything. And they were arrested this week.
And when it comes to that particular grouping, would they have had the same kind of connections that the Kinahans would have had internationally?
They've their own, actually.
Yeah.
And while they've been based here, they've never kind of migrated to Spain or onwards to Dubai as others have. So they've stayed within their area. They have their own connections. They're buying directly from Colombia. They have all their logistics themselves, and which has made them, you know, so big.
Yeah. So they filled the vacuum, I suppose, post-Kinahans, and they've been obviously a big name. We saw dramatic scenes. Was it in Spain or the authorities there moving in and making arrests?
There was arrests in Dublin on Monday.
Right.
And the leader of the grouping and two of the most senior lieutenants remain in custody as we speak. This was all part of this ghost network, they call it, which is a phone network, an encrypted phone service that was hacked by European police forces. So they listened live into them for a period of months, and they've gathered that evidence. And it's on that evidence they've now brought them into custody. 6 more in Spain the other day, and it remains to be seen if charges are brought. But basically they were doing their business, thinking that nobody could listen to them or, you know,
what is
see
that?
their
How did they get the ghost onto the phones? Or is that a piece of software?
It was
or
a
hack?
phone.
Right.
The ghost network was a phone. There was a previous hack called EncroChat, and it was an app that they put on their phone. But this was actually a device, so they believed them to be super safe.
The technology was developed within Europe to do that, and they shared that.
So they actually built their own phone system, you know, so they could do their business. And the thing is that they have to use the phones. The phones are the undoing of them time and time again. But if you're running a business, a global business, you have to be on some sort of a phone. So this is the problem. But, you know, law enforcement are catching up with them now. So, yeah.
Organised crime in this country, it has taken a completely different shape over the last number of years. If we go back to the kind of the time of Martin Call, ordinary decent criminal, huge drug, money laundering, we've got weapons trading, all this sort of stuff now. Landscape is so different in the last number of decades, really, in the last number of years.
It's a huge employer now, actually, you know, organised crime. And it's, you know, you can, if you look back to the likes of Cahill and those days, and there was a lot of armed robberies were going on, there was a finite amount of people involved in it. But I think by 2000, when Irish people started taking cocaine, literally, that's what it was, it became a recreational drug. Like prior to that in the 80s, you would have seen heroin being a problem. But like people weren't very proud, and never still are, of taking heroin. It was something they did in secret down alleyways or whatever. And there was a certain amount of people that would have been drawn to that. But when ecstasy and then cocaine came in, it became recreational.
The use is almost normalised now, and it's not just in the big cities. You can see that all around the country. Every small little town and village, it's absolutely inundated with it.
Well, this is it, and it exploded the market because it was people that were holding down jobs and then maybe taking cocaine on their nights out. And that created this huge, big market. And obviously that was filled by way more criminals than ever before. So, and the problem is then you have communities where there's kids being groomed into it, and very quickly they're... I mean, I was actually only in town there the other day, and there's a particular park near where I work, and it was unbelievable. It was like a drug supermarket.
Yeah.
Openly dealing, people coming from all over.
I walk in and out of town every day and you can see
it's
it.
just,
It's absolutely bananas.
Yeah, and people going by just used to it now.
Yeah.
There was a time that might have you turned ahead, but yeah. So that's the way it has gone. And yeah, it's dangerous out there as well, you know. And there is then these very ambitious organised crime groups like the Family who are actually not just going to dip in and make a bit of money out of it. They want to own it. And they want to be the big sort of, you know, enterprises that...
They're operating at scale.
It's a bit like a normal business, you know. You'll have some people who'll just have their corner shop and be quite happy with that, and then you have these big conglomerates.
Yeah. We've obviously over the years on your podcast, you've concentrated on various different individuals, from the likes of the Monk to God knows who else, any one of the Kinahans, so many people over the years. But recently you spoke of Conor McGregor, and actually we were speaking about that last weekend on this show as well, about his alignment with far-right ideology, how much of it is actually genuine, and how, if at all, he will get any kind of political traction from that.
Well, I mean, he obviously was over in the States and he was at the inauguration, and he was then, like, representing us all, was he?
Well, that was the claim, representing Ireland anyway, yeah.
So there
He's
was
representing himself, I think.
Yeah. It's look, Conor McGregor shouldn't be a point of discussion on Crime World. He is a sports star.
Exactly.
But there's kind of like tentacles into various areas, and one of them is that kind of, you know, the stuff he's coming out with sounds very, and is supported by the far right, which is a rising group and which has been, you know, organising all those protests and stuff. Now, you're ready for a pile-on with this, because the minute you start speaking about it, I notice as well, whenever we do anything on it, you just get this...
Oh, I get the bots coming at me left, right and centre. It's actually gas. You know, but as long as you know that's going to happen, because...
Exactly, and you just, you know, put it on silent for a wee while.
Well, that's it. Which particularly in your line of work, you must be accustomed to...
keeping people on silent.
You need to have a thick skin. Well, tell us about your live show. Well, the podcast is flying, of course, and there's nothing like it, particularly if you listen to a podcast, your favourite podcast is a live show. You're doing a live show. When is it? It's on Sunday, this Sunday night, yeah.
It's Mother's Day, I just realised that, yeah.
Get out, take your mom out to Crime World.
Take your mom out.
Bit of light relief.
Yeah, exactly. So it's the Cork Podcast Festival. So this show is, I've done a couple of series of shows with different themes. This one is Look Who's Talking. So it's actually all about talking to criminals and how you do that, how you sort of get to, you know, some of them on the couch, some of them not so friendly in the communications. But we've a couple of very intriguing and sometimes funny stories over the years that have gone on. And obviously then the big interview last year was the Monk.
Yeah.
Who would have thought he'd have been rattling into the studios of Crime World late at night?
I know.
You know, it's amazing, really. The longer you're in the job, everything comes around, doesn't it? You know, when I started off, he was this sort of distant figure who I would have been writing about, and then, you know, last year he's sitting beside me.
You never know who you'll have next year on the couch, really, will you?
You don't.
No, there you go.
Well, we're glad to have you.
Yeah.
And we'll be looking forward to seeing you at the Cork Podcast Festival. It's on Sunday night in Cork at 8 o'clock at the Opera House. Thanks so much for joining us this morning, Nicola.
Thank you so much.
It's lovely to see you.
Still to come this morning, we'll be chatting to Brendan Courtney and Sonia Lennon on their first foray into homewares.
Plus, Jack O'Keefe is making a delicious pasta dish for us in a few minutes for breakfast. Pasta for breakfast, lovely. We'll see you in a few minutes.